Hi guys, I just want to start off this video by apologizing that the scenery is not the best and that my face isn't the best groomed. I've been at work for about 12, 14 hours now, and yeah, so get on with the video. So for this project, I chose A Serious Call to a Devout and Holy Life by William Law. This book is a really good read, and I suggest that even if you haven't if you haven't picked it for this project, that pick it up and read it during your spare time if you can. Really influential. So the author is William Law. He was born in 1686 at Kingscliff, Northamptonshire, England. He went off to study at Cambridge at the age of 19, and then in 1711 he was ordained as a minister in the Church of England. Things seemed to be going fine for him until Queen Anne died, and her successor, King George, took the throne. William was one of many who decided to not take the oath of allegiance to George. And because he refused to acknowledge the king as the rightful ruler, he was deprived of his fellowship, meaning that he was ineligible to serve as a university teacher and even as a minister. It was because of his exile from the lecture hall and from the pulpit that Law decided to use his books as an avenue to be able to teach still. The thesis of his last book was that God does not merely forgive our disobedience. He calls us to obedience and to a life completely centered in Him. Now, the main focus of this book is to exclusively and extensively look upon the works that a Christian must perform in order to be separated from the world, something that we all need to learn. Now, it is very common that when you first start reading this book, it is easy to have the misconception that Law is advocating for the theology of salvation by works, but that is anything but the truth. In his book of justification by faith and works, and this forward, it is very clear that he argues the exact opposite. He argues this, that Christian life and works are as much as one and the same indivisible things as life is one and the same indivisible thing with its living options. Now Christian works are the outworking of what God is working in, as signified in Paul's statement in Philippians. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God which worketh in you both to will and to do His good pleasure. Now, this book was actually a really good read and fun. Not only did Law lay out his premise and arguments, he also used examples. He would use stories to describe his points of view. So just how Jesus used the story of the prodigal son or the two lambs and the good shepherd, so does Law use these stories to be able to get his point across so that anyone can be able to read it and understand. Now, Law uses 23 points to argue and show his premises. Obviously, we do not have the time frame to go over all 23 points by point, but if I will still discuss a few of them so you get the majority of what the book is talking about. Now, his first point was that he argued that Christians do not really live under God. Now, this is not heresy. If you guys would just give me a moment to let me explain. What Law means is that Christians are two-faced. You see many Christians devout and prayerful during church, but as soon as they step outside the church building, their life has no fruit. It does not reflect any prayer. You can't tell the difference between a non-Christian and them, which is a real struggle and a real problem that many Christians struggle with today. This is why he argues that those Christians make fun of those who are fully devout because they see what they are meant to be and they cannot be that. They can't be dedicated, so they try to lead people on as if they were. Another point Law argued was that Christianity does not allow us to live in the common ways of life. What he means by this is that we are not to conform to folly customs or to gratify and indulge in passions that the world pleases in. He makes this a very blunt and true statement. If our common life is not a common course of humility, self-denial, renunciation of the world, poverty of spirit and heavenly effect, then we do not live the lives of what true Christians ought to be. Now, law argues that we must also have a sincere desire and intention to please God. He argues that because there is a lack of intention and desire, that it's the very same reason why we fall into our shortcomings time and time again. It's like you want to change, but you're not trying, so do you really want to change? Now, we also see that this affected the early Christians because it was their instinct and true desire to please God that made them such eminent instance of piety, just as we learned last week in our reading. Now, law argues about human blindness when it comes to dealing with joy and happiness. This is the last point that will be discussed. He states this very inspirational quote, and it is in this respect that I call these joys and happiness of the world mere inventions of happiness, because neither God, nature, or reason has appointed them as such. Whatever appears joyful, great, or happy in them is entirely created or invented by blindness and vanity of our own minds. It is on those inventions of happiness what I want you to cast your eye on, that you may learn how great a good religion is that delivers you from such multitude of follies and vain pursuits, and keeps you from the torment and vexations of mind that wanders from the true happiness of God. What law is saying in this quote is that for a Christian, we must find our happiness in Christ. If we do not, we will surely fall away. And it is so easy for Christians nowadays, and even the past, to lose sight of that. And it's something that we all need to be reminded of, which is why this book was very influential for the great heroes of the English evangelical movement. Some of them were John and Charles Wesley, and of course the famous George Whitefield, Henry Venn, John Newton, and lastly, William Wilberforce. Each of them expressed these feelings one way or another. The most common expressed was that reading this book was a major turning point in their Christian life. As I stated before, that it helped them be able to learn how, more intently how to pray, which is also in the book, more intently how to seek happiness and true joy in God and not in the earthly world or in the follies that presume that we love. And just that we are not allowed to live the common earthly life. It is not meant for us. We're not supposed to take these passions. John Wesley even claimed that it was one of the 3 books that he accounted for his first explicit resolve to be fully devoted to God. Now, this book was really good, and I suggest that you guys read it if you guys have the time. Thank you again. Looking forward to hearing your comments.